It's 5:01, and so I'll check with staff to see if we are ready to begin the meeting. Very good. We do have 4 of our 5 committee members on the line at the moment, so we do have a quorum. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, commissioners, staff, and the public are attending remotely by Zoom. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking so that we can avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so that the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is the current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. So with that, we will begin this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. Our first item of business is roll call.
Roll call: Walters.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Burrows. McKiernan.
Here. Thank you so much. That takes us, there were no revisions to the agenda after it was originally published. And so our first item of business is approval of the standing committee minutes from March 2nd, 2020.
Move for approval, Harold Johnson.
Second, Commissioner Townsend.
We have a motion and a second. And rather than an assent vote, I'll just ask the clerk if she would call the roll on this motion.
Roll call: Walters.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you so much. Those minutes are approved as submitted. That takes us to our committee agenda. We have 2 items on tonight's committee's agenda. Both come from the Land Bank. And so I'll turn the presentation over to Mr. Chris Slaughter.
Thank you, Chris Slaughter with the Land Bank. Thank you, Commissioner. We have 1 application tonight. I don't know if the presentation is up, but I guess while that's being loaded, I'll give some information on it. The address is 509 North 5th Street. The applicant is applied to build a single family house. Property is currently zoned R1B. This house will be roughly about a $99,000 build. There'll be a 1,500 square foot residence with a separate 400 square foot garage that will have access from the alley. So that's the information on that. Unless there's any questions, I recommend that. I recommend this for approval.
We'll go ahead and just so that we kind of keep things orderly, if members of the committee want to participate, if you would, like the rest of our meetings, just go ahead and raise your hand on Zoom, or you can physically raise it to your camera, and I will acknowledge you to speak. Does anyone have questions or comments for Mr. Slaughter?
Commissioner, I will add that both the advisory board and the staff advisory team were both in favor of this. In fact, we had some very strong comments in support from not only the neighborhood group, but the advisory board.
So the neighborhood group is in favor of this. And if I remember correctly, this is the one vacant lot among a string of very nicely maintained houses on the east side of the 500 block.
Correct.
Very good. It does not appear that there, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Slaughter, can you give me about an indication of where the crossroads are for this particular house build off of 5th Street? What is the crossroad for that? Pretty close to it.
Yeah, I know Barnett is to the north, and would that be Jerome to the south? I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it's right. If you were looking eastwardly on it, I think it's that main street. I believe there's the old laundromat, or maybe now it's a realtor office now. But It sits more as you go up the hill towards, I know you don't approach Barnett, but Barnett would be the next street to the north.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I love it.
I
Seek
guess that would
and
be
ye shall
Sandusky.
find.
Sandusky and Toroni. So
Yeah.
I know I got the 5th Street part right.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
If there are no other comments or questions for Mr. Slaughter, is there a motion on this application?
Harold Johnson moved to approve.
Gail Townsend, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept this application as submitted. I will say that I certainly look forward to having this gap filled in on 5th Street. Seeing no other request for comment, roll call, please.
Roll call Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you so much. Mr. Slaughter, an update on the rehab program.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Our monthly update on the rehab program. If we can go to the next slide. So this again is showing the increase of the number of contractors. We're currently sitting at
I'm in
15 in the program.
Are you back? Okay.
Next slide.
Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.
The number of houses in our rehab, as you can see, we had an uptick, and that's due to the houses from the tax sale back in December. So we're now sitting at 77. Houses with no offer, we also have an uptick. Those are boarded and secured. We are currently trying to get some direction on when would be the time to have open houses, because we just don't want to go over that magical number right now, which is sitting at 10. But we're looking into that to see when we'll be holding those, but I would imagine it'll be in the near future. Next slide. Houses recommended for demo. We're still sitting at 55. And out of those 55, we still have 16 that are still in the process of, or going through the demo process for demolishing. Next slide. The number of houses that started, we are at 45. That will probably be up to 46. Commissioner McKiernan, the property over off 11th Street and Orville, the old little service station, we have a rehabber that's going to convert that into a residence. So we've got the document stuff already filed. I just need to get with him this week, give him the key to it, and get him started. Next slide. The number awaiting closing, we are down to 2, and those are just waiting on the title company and the rehabbers to get together to get those closed. So that should drop to 0 here pretty soon. And the last slide, we are now up to 54 completed rehabs in the program. So that's the update tonight. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Slaughter? And as I'm waiting to see if any hands go up, I'll ask Mr. Slaughter, is that the house, 11th and Orville, that southwest corner? The building sits on the diagonal?
Correct. I think it's a little green building. At one point used to be a service station or maybe like a little convenience store.
No, it was a little service station. Are they rehabbing that as a residence?
Yep. Last year we worked to have the underground tanks removed and remediated, and everything turned out good there. So fingers crossed, this gentleman will be able to complete his project.
That will be a funky, very nice little rehab in that neighborhood. Excellent. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised for comments or questions. And so I will just say on behalf of our entire committee, we thank you not only for your rehab update tonight, but we thank you for all your work that you've done for the Land Bank and for the unified government and for this committee over your many years.
Thank you. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to serve the community and develop something that's going to better the community, and look forward to seeing that progress continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is the last item on our committee agenda this evening. I guess I should have checked with the clerk. Bridget, I did not ask if there was anyone who had submitted any correspondence that they wish to share with this committee this evening.
No requests have been submitted to the clerk's office.
Fantastic. With that, there is no more business for this committee. This meeting is adjourned, and I will turn this over to Commissioner Burrows for Economic Development and Finance.
Thank you, Brian. If you'll give me just a few minutes, the storm knocked out my system today, so I'm on by phone, and while I'm talking with you, I'm still trying to get my computer to come up. So if you'll give me just 1 minute while everybody changes around, and we'll get started.
While we're waiting for Commissioner Burrows, can we please mute your phones or your computers so that we do not get any background noise? Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Just 1 second here. Okay, thank you. Let's, before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to the, are you all getting an echo?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Just 1 second.
Commissioner Burrows, if you're on with your phone and your computer, you may need to hang up your phone and just use the computer audio.
Got it. Okay. Before I call the meeting to order,
Commissioner, are you still on the line? Commissioner Burrows, are you still on the line?
Commissioner McKiernan, I've shared the guide with you in case you need it.
Thank you very much. I think that Commissioner Burrows may have dropped off based
Should be back
on,
on.
he's coming back.
Yes, he's
I see
coming
him
back. I just let him back.
Fantastic.
okay. Does that work?
Yes, it does. Fantastic.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. That storm wreaked havoc on my property over here today. So I've just been trying to fight through all of this. Thank you. I appreciate your patience, and to the public for listening, I apologize for the disorganization, but we'll get through this evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, the committee members, staff, and public that are attending remotely via Zoom, all participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so that the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Also, due to the COVID-19 requirements, public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public has been allowed to submit comments prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting standing committee to order, and I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. And I would ask that the clerk please call roll.
Roll call: Bryant,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Townsend,
Here.
McKiernan,
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, committee. I do believe we have a revision to tonight's meeting. Bridget, do we have a revision to tonight's meeting?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we do have a blue sheet that has been distributed under the committee agenda. We have a new item, it's item number 5, and it's regarding the budget revisions due to the COVID-19. And that will be the last item on the agenda.
Thank you. Now I would ask for the first order of business would be to have a motion for the March 2nd minutes.
Commissioner McKiernan, approve as submitted.
Johnson, second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Seeing none, thank you, committee. We have 5 items on our agenda tonight due to the change. The first item up is removing Project Area B from the Mission Cliffs 2 Redevelopment District. And I believe we have Catherine Carter joining us this evening. So Catherine, if you'd be so kind to walk us through it.
You're on mute. Catherine, you're on mute. Or we're not hearing your audio. Now you're.
How about now?
Yes.
Hey, there you go.
I was trying to find some headset. All right. All right. What I was saying is I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see this? Slideshow. There we go. Okay, so this is a request to remove Project Area B from the Mission Cliffs TIF. This was a TIF that was put in place back in 2008. At that time, there were 2 different project areas that were created. Project Area A, and I'll get into which areas is which, but Project Area A did move forward with development and has continued to have development. With that development, bonds were issued. However, with Project Area B, as you can imagine, in 2008, there was only so much interest in having residential being built. So there was just never a project that was actually approved for Project Area B. As you can see, this is just west of KU Med Center. So here's a little closer view. You can see with my cursor here, this kind of brownish color is Project Area A. Most of these houses now, it has taken quite some time, but most of these houses have, I think there's still maybe 2 or 3 lots that have not been developed. And then kind of the first phase of these townhomes were developed. However, as you can see in this kind of teal color, Project Area B, no project ever moved forward. So no bonds were ever issued. And now that we are, quite far into the TIF, one of the issues is that now there's only about 8 years left in this TIF. And with that, it's really too little time. We're kind of in this kind of weird intermediate time where there's not enough time to really get any benefit from a TIF. And so we are going to ask that you actually remove project area B. We've had a feasibility study done, and project area B is actually legally precluded from using any increment to pay the project area A bonds. So they really have kind of no legal connection between project area A and project area B. So this will not change project area A at all. That will continue to move forward as it has stood. And hopefully by removing project area B, we believe that this will allow for future development in this area where we can kind of start from scratch. And in fact, I imagine in the next month or two, you'll actually see a project come forward that would be residential in nature to consider this area. And with that, if you have any questions, but once again, we'd be terminating the tax increment financing for project area B and removing it from the TIF.
Thank you, Catherine. Does any member of the committee have any questions or comments? I'll ask the clerk if any comments were received from the public. If so,
No comments were received from the clerk's office.
okay. This is an action item, so I would ask at this time if the entertain a motion for approval or.
Move to approve, Commissioner Townsend.
Second that motion, Jeff Bryant.
Thank you, committee. There's been a motion and a second.
Roll call: Bryant,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye. Thank you, committee. Item number 2, and the next couple of items are all for information only. Item number 2 is the first quarter 2020 cash and investment report. This evening we have Kathleen Von Evening. So with that, I would ask that you please proceed.
Good evening, commissioners. This is Debbie Johnsher. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, and Debbie, I apologize. I didn't see your name on my list.
That's okay. So tonight we're here to talk about to give the results of the 2019 fourth quarter budget to actual financial performance. So we'll start with the next slide. We'll go into the first quarter or consolidated general fund totals. So on this slide, we're comparing year-to-date totals for 2019 with year-to-date totals 2018. For revenues for 2019 were up about 1.6% over 2018. However, revenues for 2019 were 1.9% below budget compared with revenues for 2018 were about 1.5% below budget. Expenditures were 2.7% higher than 2018. 2.7% higher in 2018 than they were in 2019. At the end of, you'll see that the balance at the end of 2018, the fund balance was 26.8 million. We had a net change in 2019 of just slightly over 1 million, bringing the fund balance total to 27.9 million fund balance at the end of 2019. On the next slide, we'll talk about the Okay, we're going to talk about the 2019. We'll go into a little bit more detail within the city general fund. I'm going to talk about both the city general fund revenues and the county general fund revenues. So these next two slides are for the city general fund. And just to note that total revenues collected for 2019 were about 97% of the revenue budget for 2019. Revenues were about 4.7 million below budget. I'll just point out a few things. Property and sales tax were both just slightly over 100% of budget. Intergovernmental revenues were at 110% of budget, and fines, forfeits, and fees were also slightly over budget. The graph on the lower right just shows a comparison of each category for fourth quarter 2018 versus fourth quarter year-to-date totals for 2019. The blue is the prior period and red is the current period. The next slide for the City General Fund shows the comparison, also the comparison with the 2018 actuals for year to date. So as you can see, we had sales tax ended 779,000 higher than total collections for 2018, as well as charges for service 269,000 above totals for 2018. So 2019 revenues in the City General Fund ended at 143.5 million versus 2018, we ended at 143.7 million. So about 238,000 below what we collected in 2018. Now we'll go into the County General Fund. And we've got the same information that we presented for the city. For the County General Fund, the main source of revenue is property tax revenues. And as you can see that we collected 101.2% of budget for property tax revenues. Total revenues were just over budget at 100.9%. Sales tax for this fund was also above 100%, as well as charges for service at 121%. The charges for service, jail fees make up about 80% of this revenue and accounted for this increase. The graph on the right hand just shows the comparison between 2018 and 2019 by each revenue category, with the blue being the prior period and red being the current period. And then on this final slide for the County General Fund, just shows the revenues in detail broken out compared with 2019 year to date and 2018. And you can see that property tax increased about 2.8 million over what we collected in 2018. Sales tax was fairly neutral, just slightly over what we collected. And charges for service were about 324,000 over, and miscellaneous and transfers in were about 545,000. So total revenues on the County General Fund for 2019 collected were just over 65 million. And from 2018, it was 61.4 million. That's all I have on the revenue. So I'm going to turn the expenditures over to Reginald Lindsay, our budget manager.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes, Reggie.
On the current slide, we have two views. We got the budget comparison to actuals at the upper left-hand corner, and then at the bottom left-hand corner, or bottom right-hand corner, we have the year-over-year actual comparison. So to start out with in the upper left-hand corner, we see personnel. We spent 97% of our funds, and personnel includes salaries, pension, overtime, benefits, and payouts. And then services, we spent almost 96% of our expenditures. They were allotted. And then that services line item on the City General side, that includes some of the bigger items are our transit contracts, our trash contract and software contracts, and then city jail costs. Next line was supplies. We spent almost 92% of the expenses that we had budgeted there, and that includes commodities such as natural gas, fuel, and parts. And some of the other line items, we had capital outlay where we spent about 80% of our funds. And we see in general, in the city general fund, just across the board, what was a lot of our $150 million budget, we spent 96% of it. So the other table that's on the slide compares our 2019 actuals to our 2018 actuals. So we see our personnel, we had a 1% increase in what we spent compared to last year. In services, we were up about 10%. And then supplies were up 15%. Then our capital outlay, we're actually down about 22%, but we did have a lower budget in 2018 compared to 2019. On the next slide, I'm going to go over the county general fund. So we have the same views that we had when I reviewed the city general fund, which where we have the budget comparison, upper left-hand corner. And then at the bottom, we have the year-over-year actuals of the lower right-hand corner. So in the county general fund and personnel side, we can see we were very close on our personnel. We spent almost 100% of that budget in personnel. Then on the service side, we spent 88% of it. And some of the things that we pay on the county side out of services are inmate medical contracts, then also our 4-mile contracts in our jail. Then in supplies, we spent 87% of our budget. And some of the things we pay out of supplies, again, are natural gas, fuel, and parts. And then capital outlay, we use 60% of the budget. So all in total of the $65 million budget that we have for the county general fund, we spent almost 96% of it. And if we compare down on the right, the table that's there comparing 2018 actuals to 2019 actuals, we can see personnel was up 14%. Our services were up 8.2%. Then our supplies were down 5%. And then capital outlay was down 8%. Next slide is a comparison of our other 7 tax levy funds. So on the left-hand side of the page, we have revenues. That's our money coming in. And then on the right-hand side of the page, we have expenditures, and that's our money going out. So ideal thing we're looking for here is if revenue is over 100%, that is a good thing. So we look for that. And expenditures, we want to be under 100%. So some of the funds that I did not go through that show up on this page are Consolidated Parks General Fund. And we see we collected almost 100% of the revenue we forecasted. And then over on the expenditure side, we spent 95% of that budget. And then in our county bond and interest fund, we got a little bit more money than we expected, at a little over 100%. And we almost spent 99%. And then in debt development disabilities, we brought in almost 100% of what we forecasted. And we spent 73% of the money. And then over in the elections office, we bought in about 98% of what we expected. And we spent 88% of that funding. And on the next slide slide right here is a snapshot of our 19 other funds, which consist of special revenue funds and enterprise funds. And again, we kind of set up like we were on the last slide where we have revenues on the left and expenditures on the right. And one of the key things with revenues are if it's over 100%, that's good, or close to 100%, that's good. And with expenditures, we don't want to be over 100%. So you will see we do have a fund at the bottom of the page, Treasury Technology Fund is at 219%. One of the reasons that 219% is because what we originally budgeted there, we had some equipment we needed to purchase, and we were able to purchase it from the fund balance. So we were able to increase that budget just because it had the fund balance. That's one of the funds where we can do that. Most of our other funds, we can't go over the fund balance or go over the expenditure amount, even if they do have the fund balance. But since the Treasury's Technology Fund did have the fund balance, we were able to expend more than what we originally budgeted for. Are there any questions about the slides that Debbie and I just went through?
Thank you. Committee, any questions, any comments? Seeing none, I do have one or two questions, if I may. If you would go back to the
Commissioner Burrows, you're cutting out. We cannot hear you.
Are there any questions in reference to the presentation? I wanted to talk about the county revenue slide, Reggie, the one that showed the property taxes. There we go. Thank you. I see we have a 2.854 increase on that, and it looks like that it'd be just under 3 basis points. So I know there was discussion about mill levy reductions, but it looks like our valuations came in higher than what we anticipated. That give us a total of really just a little over 3 basis points increase for our total budget for the county.
So I'd like to answer that question. This is a comparison with the prior year. So the prior year $35 million number is based on valuation in 2018. We budgeted in property tax, you'll see here, $37.9 million in revenue. And we came in about 400 or 500,000 above that. What you're looking at, so right where we expected. What this a $2.8 million amount, that's a result of assessed value increase between the 19 and the 18 year.
Okay. Well,
and that assessed value, supports operations of the county and the jail. So
I apologize. Evidently, I'm misreading it, or I made the wrong notes here that I have as we were going through this. And somehow or another, did we skip over item 2? I had called for a report. It took me a while to catch up because I'd called for item 2, first quarter 20 cash and investment report, and instead we jumped to item 3 on my agenda, which is actuals.
Yes, it looked like they went to item 3 instead of item 2.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It took me a few minutes to catch up as to where we were, and that could be why my notes are the way they are.
Sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I also wanted to point. I just wanted to point out that the city bond and interest fund. You see how, well, Reggie overlooked mentioning this. It's you see that the budgeted revenue and the budgeted expenditure are greater than 100%. That's because we refinanced the Midtown TIF bonds. And when you do that, you have to, do all these in and out transfer, other financing sources transactions as part of the accounting. And so it's a wash what you're seeing here, but it did exceed the authorized budget. The bond documents actually overrule the authorized budget amount. So if you're issuing bonds, when the commission approved the bonds, they approved also the budget to do the refinancing. So, but that's why you see that difference there, just so you know.
And thank you for pointing that out, Kathleen. I look at the 105.7% and I look at the 102.8%, and there's that 3 basis points, little over, I guess it'd be right about 3 basis points in lower expenditures than what we had. So evidently our revenues, we were fortunate in our revenues for 2019.
Yes. And at the coming meeting, we will be, the next month's ED&F meeting, we'll be talking about the special revenue funds reserves, and we'll be presenting more information on that.
Okay. Are there any other members that have any questions or comments in reference to the presentation on the comparison of the fourth quarter budget to actuals report? Okay, seeing none. Any other comments from conferees? Okay, hearing none. I guess my question would be, do we move back to item 2?
Yes, we need to go back to number 2. Yes.
Thank you. Committee, that presentation was for information only, as is item 2 will be for information only, and it will be the first quarter 2020 cash and investment report. And I do believe I'm calling the right participants this time with Kathleen Von Atchen, Rick McKessick, and Andrea Parra. My apologies, Andrea Parra with us this evening. So if you'd be kind enough to start the presentation.
I'm going to hand it off to Andrea. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Andrea Parra, Deputy Treasurer here with Unified Government. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay, going through the presentation, we are, of course, as Chair had mentioned, we are going through first quarter 2020's quarterly investment report for the Unified Government through March 31. First slide I'd like to go over is the investment summary. A few things I'd like to point out, first of which would be our weighted average yield came to 1.78%. Another thing to point out would be weighted dates to maturity, which is 164 days, is down from the last few quarters as we were moving towards more short-term investment securities because of capital. Temporary notes, as noted, other items were just rated better at short-term as opposed to long-term due to the current scale of everything going on. Another thing to note would just be where our components are for our portfolio. We do sit at about 59% of cash. The remaining 41% is in investments. Total portfolio does include property tax that would have been distributed in March. Therefore, it is a little bit higher as we are going to go through another distribution in June. Next slide is going to be some more key metrics. Average yield noted 1.78%, still above the target T-bill rate. As you can probably see, that T-bill rate dropped drastically between Q4 and Q1 due to current situations we have, additional Fed rate decrease. Still want to note that we are still remaining within the institute requirement for compliance of issuance. All financial institutions that have investments with us remain under the current investment requirement and continue to hopefully stay and settle with that rate among the rest of the year, assuming things don't drastically change. Some interest accrued. We are at looks about 1.5 million already for Q1, which is great. Another slide we have is the detail for issuers. We are at 266 million portfolio. 89 million is going to be CDs, fully collateralized. The other 19 million is going to be about 7% of agencies and securities backed through faith of federal government. as you see, all under the issuance of 25%. Not a whole lot happened in Q1 of 2020. We did have a fairly large investment mature, which was going to be with Commerce Bank. We went out for a short-term 1-year CD that matured on the 20th of January for $15 million. The coupon rate there for the overnight was at 1.379 ending in Q1. I will note that is obviously going to be drastically changed. That did drop quite significantly and is remaining subtle as it stands. I do watch that pretty frequently every day, about once or twice, just checking to see to make sure it's still remaining at a valuable rate. Before Rick gets started on this, I just wanted to mention also something forthcoming that we're working on right now would be the local emphasis. Starting to recertify all of the local financial institutions that are here in our county, community, Wyandotte County. We did have 11 last year that were certified. We're hoping to get what is in total, which is 16, at least contact with all of them, get them recertified and move through that process. So you'll see the results of that in our next ED&F for Q2 2020.
With regard to the screen we have now in front of us, the UG fund category, Rick McKessick, treasurer. This presents, we have a number of funds in the unified government, as was just covered in the budget to actuals report. And this particular slide will demonstrate exactly where those funds are being held. And you will note that the money that we're holding, 50% of it is a capital projects fund. And then you can see the breakdown from there, going down to general fund of 19% and et cetera from there. So obviously that gives a pretty good guide on where those dollars are held, so that we have a good idea of what the limitations are on those dollars that we're having. And I think that was the last slide, is it not, Andrea? So we will entertain any questions.
Commissioner Burrows, Jeff Bryant has a question. I think you're on mute, Tom.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, please go ahead.
Rick, so with what's happening in the market, I know this is moving you into the current. How have we seen performance on a lot of the bonds right now?
Well, what we're seeing is quite unusual in that the overnight rate that we are getting with our banking institution is significantly higher than anything we can go out and get right now. As Andrea noted, the T-bill rate at the end of the month, I think, was 0.11%, which is minuscule. And our overnight at the end of the quarter was 1.1 or something like that. And I think it's right around 0.8% now. And so honestly, we would lose money to actually go out and invest. We have been talking about it and looking at it, and there just isn't any logic to putting out dollars for long-term investments or even short-term investments, because as of right now, we're getting quite a higher rate with our return. We have a number of long-term investments that will be coming due the rest of this year. And what we will see is those interests on those investments will be recorded. And this year we shouldn't see a significant impact to our interest income this year, but in the out years, we will start to see that really starting to come to fruition.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Clerk, were there any comments from the public?
No comments were submitted.
Thank you. Rick, Andrea, thank you for your presentation. I would assume that from the second quarter through the end of the year, we're going to see a tremendous decline in interest income as well as investment income. But are we prepared to look at every option on the table to ensure that we can make the best of a very challenging situation.
Commissioner, you did cut out at the end, but I do think I got the point of your question. We are continuing to look at any options that we have on a regular basis. And if something does make sense, we will definitely go that direction.
Thank you. I do trust both of your judgments. You've been very effective at not only your presentations, but in ensuring that we stay in compliance, something that the Finance Committee had really some concerns about initially. But thank you and kudos to the job you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As again, that ends the hearing on item number 2, and it was again for information purposes only. We've already heard the presentation on item number 3. We will now go to item number 4. And we have Kathleen, 4 together.
I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I'm guessing the next one is the budget revisions, right?
Yes, item number 4 is budget revisions.
Yeah, Reginald Lindsay is going to be making this presentation, so take it away, Reggie.
All right, the fourth quarter 2019 budget revisions. We had 11 budget revisions that were over $10,000 in the fourth quarter. One of them was done from contingency. Department-wise, 2 of them were from Public Works, 1 was from the coroner's office, and 1 was from the fire department, and 3 of them came from the police department, and 3 came from Public Works, and then 1 came from emergency management. And all but 1 of them was done from within their department. Any questions on these?
Any questions, committee? Clerk, any comments from the public?
No comments from the public.
Thank you. Again, this was for hearing purposes only. And hearing that, I'd like to thank the finance team for the presentation this evening. And with that, we have one more item. We'll move to item 5, and that being the budget revisions due to the COVID-19. These are the emergency budget provisions associated to COVID-19. And I believe that Reggie, you are to make the presentation this evening.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend, at your convenience.
All righty. So I have 2 different type of budget revisions that I'm going to talk about tonight. One of them is for COVID-19 expenditure requests from the health department and the emergency management. And then the second is for COVID-19 expenditures that were operational costs that have already occurred year to date. So the first one that's on screen is coming from us via the health department and emergency management. And the request is $952,000. And so part of that is for testing. And this will provide testing for 13 additional Wyandotte County residents or employees within businesses in Wyandotte County that we plan to go out to August 1st doing this. And again, that total amount is $201,000. And then contract tracing. And this is for contact all positive cases and all their contacts within 24 hours of notification, and to manage clusters and outbreaks in businesses and community locations. And what will be included in this is hiring 2 master level professionals to assist in epidemiological management of COVID-19, and that cost would be $57,000. Then the next cost was for project management, which would effectively manage ongoing COVID-related projects that are responsive to our community needs. That can include anything from managing a call line to identifying and implementing technological solutions. And that would include one master's level project manager for 1 year. And that cost would be $80,000. And then next would be a COVID call line, which will provide clinical, social, and business assistance to Wyandotte County residents who call a 311 call line. And that would include 3 full-time community health workers for 24 weeks for 40 hours. And that cost would be $57,000. Then next would be communications countywide, and that provide timely, effective, reliable COVID-related communications to Wyandotte residents, medical providers, businesses, and partners within the county. And what this would do was basically communicate a testing campaign and provide media and printing and mailing to our citizens and businesses and stakeholders. Then the other item would be PPE, protective gear of $260,000. And that would get us our total of $952,000 that emergency management is requesting and the health department. And of this $952,000, 85% of it will be reimbursed by FEMA. And we were responsible for the other 15% to pay from our certified funds. Any questions on those items?
This, Alan, we may have some slightly modified version figures from the health department on those, but I think that's pretty close to the numbers. They're on the line here as well, can chime in.
These are correct for the most part. It just doesn't have that other 292,000 of other UG expenses, but perhaps that's covered separately.
Yeah, I'm going to cover those on the next item.
Okay.
And I had down for the call line, I had down 66,000. Was I incorrect on that? I had 66,240.
No, we backed it off a little bit. So the 57.6 is correct.
Okay. All right. So readjusted. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Burrows,
Did anybody have any
Commissioner
questions
Johnson
for the
has
health
a question.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner McKiernan. Alan, did you say you had some different numbers that you wanted? Did you want to share those numbers?
Just saying that it's been fluid. I think these are there's another slide that has some additional numbers on there, and if there are any questions, we have members from the health department here who are who can answer any questions on the specifics of any of these items as well.
Commissioner, we're all talking about the same number. It's just that the additional 300,000 or 290,000 is going to be covered on the next slide by Reggie. So.
Okay, are there any questions on the first slide? My understanding is we had a commissioner with a request or question.
Yes, it's Commissioner Johnson.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure everyone understands that of the amount that's requested by the health department, all of the amounts above the 296 are going to be reimbursable at roughly 75 to 80%. So they will be placed in a grant fund and pending the reimbursement of those monies once the costs are spent. So the budget revision basically that we're requesting is for the amounts that would not be reimbursed because grant funds are not budgeted. And those, the match or the 15 to 25% would be budgeted in budgeted county funds. So that's what the budget request includes, not the entire we're not going to be incurring all these costs. They'll be reimbursed.
I believe that's understood, Kathleen. During the presentation, I believe that was made apparent with the 85% reimbursement aspect. I believe Commissioner Johnson had a question.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Burrows. The PPE and the testing, are we going out to private businesses to acquire these, or is that coming from a federal agency? That's my first question. And then second question is, we've talked about with communications, the importance of really getting a mailer out to all residents in Wyandotte County. And I just wanted to see if that was in fact what the intent was. I heard printing and I heard mailing, but I wanted to know if the intent was to get some type of mailer relative to whatever we're doing, in particular the testings out to every Wyandotte County citizen. So those are my two questions, and I'll just mute for the answers.
Well, I mean, I can answer some of that. So the testing and the personal protective equipment, we are getting some of the personal protective equipment from the state. We're getting some of our testing from the state, but it is not nearly enough. And so we are having to go out for other bids and go to the private industry to receive some of that assistance. So it's a combination of both. And as far as the communications part, we have sent out the additional citizen and also some specific flyers out to residents around Riverbend that were having some concerns. So some of it is targeted mailers, as well as some of it is across the board mailers.
Commissioner, I'll add a little additional context, which is it does envision communications to everybody who receives the citizen now. It's built in there, funding for something around testing, specific to testing, as well as envisioning two pieces related to kind of the recovery and the kind of the restart communications. So recognizing that it is a challenging communications endeavor, given that you've got things that are happening at the state level, at the regional level, and here at the local level. And so trying to provide timely, accurate, and digestible communications around the restart process as well. So
I would definitely agree with you, Alan. This is very challenging when you have so many different voices that are being heard, and trying to crystallize a singular thought has been quite a challenge as I've worked with Mid-America Regional Council, certainly with the UG, and we know also getting information from both states, whether it be Kansas or Missouri. So it is a challenge. So hats off to you all for your attempts, but I just want to make sure we're doing our level best to make sure that all of our constituents and residents are getting the best information that we can provide given the challenging circumstances. So thank you again for all of your work, Terry, also everyone involved with the health department. Y'all have already said this before, but I really do appreciate your endeavors and your efforts.
Commissioner McKiernan has a
I don't
question.
see any hands up. Please go ahead. Who's speaking?
Commissioner McKiernan, please. I just want to make sure that I understand. We've got 952.7 listed on this screen, but I think, Alan, it might have been you that said that not the entirety of the 952.7 would be reimbursable, but rather that the 296. I'm trying to wrap my brain around the entirety of what will be spent by us and what is potential to be reimbursed. So if I've got this right, the 952.7 is the total amount here, but the 296 is not considered for reimbursement. So that will be our expense in its entirety. Is that correct?
No, the 292 additional that I haven't went over yet, that could possibly be reimbursed also.
So the entire 952,700 is eligible for reimbursement. Is that correct?
Yes, and then there's another amount that I'm gonna go over after this, which are expenses we've already incurred.
Okay, I misunderstood because I could have sworn that someone said that some one of these figures was not reimbursable, but rather would be borne entirely by us.
No, I think they said that the next slide is what we've already incurred, but it could be reimbursable.
Okay, and okay,
Commissioner, Kathleen, do you want to explain that you were talking about putting some of these expenses into the grant fund sort of category? I think you mentioned that, and that may be the basis of the question from Commissioner McKiernan. Kathleen? Seem to have lost her.
No need. We're fine. I'm finished. Thank you.
Well, we love technology. Reggie, I believe you had more to your presentation. Any other? Commissioner McKiernan, if she gets your answer as we move through this, we'll pause and have her answer your question.
This is Jeff Bryant.
Yes, Jeff.
Okay, so Reggie, before you move on, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this, and maybe it'll clarify for others. So the 952 is expenses to incur, not have incurred yet.
Yeah,
This 292 is what we've already incurred.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so we're looking at future costs of almost $1 million versus current already expenditures of close to 300,000.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. That clarifies it for me.
And just so FYI, with the $952,000, we would be looking for like $142,000 to pay for our 15% from our certified funds. So the expenses
Reggie,
on.
You broke up on my end. I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you stated.
The last thing I said was the $952,000 that from the health department's request and emergency management request is that 15% of that would be $142,000, and that was what we would be paying from our certified funds on that first request.
Okay.
All right, so here is the second amount of funding we were talking about. And what this funding is just year-to-date operating expenses that we have already incurred just since everything started in early March with COVID-19. So we got 12 departments on this sheet that we've spent $292,000 on across the board. And we are looking to get reimbursed from this on FEMA also. But these are expenses that have already occurred because they were such an emergency when they were happening. And so 15% of this would be $43,000.
Okay. Reggie, are these prices for the PPE equipment? Have some of those items, those expenses already been taken care of? I see the fire department for personal protective gear.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's gloves, masks, whatever else they may need. Is that by any chance included on the prior page in the 260,000?
No, it's not.
Okay,
no, this is specifically for the fire department, while on the other page that was emergency management and health department requests. So this is specifically for the fire department, like for their everyday operation, while the other request was for emergency management and health department. And one of the things that emergency management has been doing is getting PPE out to the community also. So that's part of that request. And then it's also needed at the health department for the testing that they're doing.
So we have about 165,000 going to our frontline defenders, our fire department, health department, I'm sorry, fire department, police department, sheriff's department on PPE in this budget proposal.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from committee? Clerk, did we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. This is an action item. Reggie, one last question. All this money will come out of where?
It will come out of multiple funds, mostly the city and the county.
Are we talking ending balance, revenues, reserves?
Contingencies.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, this is an action item. I entertain a motion.
This is Jeff Bryant. I move to approve.
Commissioner McKiernan, second.
There's been a motion by Member Bryant and Commissioner McKiernan is second. I would ask the clerk to call roll.
Roll call Bryant,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye. Thank you, committee. Before I leave, I just want to personally say thank you to our employees and all the essential and public safety workers for their service in these extremely trying times. And I do send my very best. We can't thank you enough. And we're all in this together. Stay in, stay safe. I appreciate the work of the committee this evening. That concludes tonight's meeting. With that, I just want to say thank you, and we are adjourned.